Hi everybody, this is Arkady Freckman. I'm a New York City personal injury trial attorney, and today we're talking about depositions. In fact, this week I did 2 depositions, and they were both plaintiff depositions in 2 different types of cases. First of all, it's very hard to get a deposition scheduled. You file a lawsuit, you go to a court conference, the judge orders a deposition date. But when you want to actually pick a date and get a date scheduled in New York at least and actually do the deposition, it doesn't work. The first case, we had many dates, like 3 or 4. We finally had one last week, 6 a.m. that day. The lawyer says, oh, something came up, I'm sick, put it over. I noticed in New York, they really like to confirm depositions the day before. But the problem with that is you have to prepare the client. If you're a good trial lawyer and you want the client to testify well, you have to prepare the client 3 or 4 different times. Each prep should be at least an hour. So you need to then prepare, let's say 3 or 4 times for the date that you have in the court order or the date that you have that you agreed upon with the defense counsel. But then what if they don't do it that day? Then you adjourn it like 2-3 weeks, then you have to prepare 3 or 4 times again, maybe a little less because you've already prepared. But you know what I'm saying? So that's very ineffective or not really convenient. I'd rather have the date okay, May 20th, I'm having a deposition, and today is like April 25th, right? So I have like almost a month and I can prepare for it and I know it's definitely going that day. That's much better than the day before at 5 p.m. Tomorrow we're doing a deposition, wait a minute. How are you gonna prepare? So that's one issue. But then the other issue was, I've done other videos about depositions where I tried to help and I gave actual questions based on, my experience, and I think it was called Super Depositions. So you could watch that video. I think there's like an AI thumbnail with me in a Superman outfit. And basically, yeah, I thought these cases that I did this week were both like pretty big cases. One of them was like a truck crash with a traumatic brain injury and a spinal fusion. The other one was also a truck hitting a pedestrian with like really terrible injuries, like, multiple surgeries, skull fractures, just terrible injuries, very catastrophic. So I thought it would be a little different for this type of case, because when you get into these kind of cases, I thought they're going to send some kind of lawyer who's like a medical malpractice or a guru who's going to like really try to ask questions. But no, all they do, and this is like crazy to me, all they do, they follow the script. They have like some kind of script and they just read the questions from the script. So the first case, for example, they're asking my client, he testified he was driving a Honda from 2022. They're asking him, was your Honda equipped with turn signals? I mean, yeah, you think? I mean, this is what they're asking. Like, is your Honda equipped with seatbelts? Is your Honda equipped with airbags? And just like silly things like that. Like, of course it is. Why wouldn't it be equipped with, like, I have the one Honda in the world that didn't have turn signals, And it's just like nonsense, but I guess they just have to do it. And they're asking, all these questions. And in the second one, it was kind of similar. They're asking all these questions about like how the incident happened, this and that. But there we have, in the first case, we actually have a video of, because he had a dash cam, we have a video of the incident. And he's asking all these questions like, what lane were you in? How many lanes were there? But what's the difference? You have the video. Just look at the video. It's all there. I don't know. So to me, it was like, and the deposition, each of them, the first one, actually, we had an interpreter. It took 7 hours. 7 hours from 10 a.m. and we weren't done until 5 p.m. In fact, I had to leave at around 3 p.m. and I had to get Rick, if you guys remember Rick, he was on a few of these videos with me. He had to take over and finish defending the first client because I had to prep the second client, for his deposition. So anyway, the final prep, the fourth and final prep I had to do. So anyway, but it just seems silly to me, like, why would you ask these questions? And then like when they start the deposition, they ask about like, are you under the influence of drugs or alcohol? Are there any medications you're supposed to take that you failed to take? So it's just like off a script. They're just reading off a script. And, and then they're asking questions like, did you review anything to prepare for the deposition? Did you review any documents? Did you review any papers? So, and they were a little different lawyers. I think the first case was like more of a older lawyer. He'd probably been a lawyer for like 20 years. The second case, I think he was a little younger, but probably like 5 or more years. They're both really smart lawyers, good lawyers, but I just don't understand that idea of like reading off a script. But I think it's good for plaintiffs, right? Because if you know that's all they're doing is just like basically following a checklist, then you could know what the questions are. Like I've already told you in the Super Depositions video, those are all the questions. you could really prepare well. And I think both of the clients did amazingly well. The first client did excellent. The second client did, just as well. So there was really no issue. And I'm just excited now to depose the defendants and show all the safety problems and then put the cases on the trial calendar, because they're both like really strong cases. But yeah, there's not really much to worry about. Like with some of these clients, they get worried and they get nervous, which is understandable because they've never testified in a deposition before. But there's really nothing to be nervous about as long as you know like what happened, the date that it happened, like what happened, how are you going to explain that the defendants are at fault? And as long as you know, like with respect to damages, what your injury is and what you're feeling and your symptoms, right? Because most of what they ask is like, why did you go to this doctor? Who referred you? What were your complaints or symptoms? What did the doctor do for you? Okay, where did you go next? And the same questions, who referred you? What did you complain about? What did the doctor do for you? It's pretty straightforward. And you don't have to know every doctor, every medical treatment, because it's in the medical records, right? You just know as much as you remember. Oh, one thing that's interesting is they ask all these things about, the person, like for example, who is your wife? What are the names? When did you get married? About like your friends, what are their names? But then they never really like follow up to actually like depose those people. So what's the difference? Just that you want to get their names. Like, you know what I mean? What I do is I actually go and I speak to those people and I get like their story about how the plaintiff was before the accident, how they are after, what's the difference, and then those people will testify. So that's much of a deeper dive. They just get their names, but they don't do anything with them. So I don't even understand why they need them. So basically, like to me, this deposition, like the first one, for example, it took 7 hours. I think it could have been done more effectively in like 1 or 2. I just don't see the point. Half the questions just made no sense, and they're completely irrelevant. And same thing, more or less, for the second one. The guy was just asking about like arrests, like, okay, if you don't have any convictions, you can't really ask about arrests. What's the difference, right? If the officer looked at you funny, thinks you looked at him funny, he could arrest you. If it didn't result in a conviction, what's the difference whether he was or wasn't arrested? So it's just like, and I think the other thing they try to do is, I noticed both depositions, they don't start with, let's say, the accident. They start with something else. I think the first one started with some medical treatment that he's having now in January of 2025. The second one started with like some businesses that his family has and all about the businesses. I think what they do is they just ask you about something like kind of irrelevant to kind of wear you down, like a war of attrition. And then like 2 hours in, you're like tired, you're just get me the hell out of here. And then they're like, oh, what happened in the accident? And then you're like, oh, okay, I don't remember, I don't know, because you're just like tired. So maybe that's their trick. I don't know, but it seems like both of them did that. But you just have to like be prepared for a marathon basically, and just be ready that like 70% of the questions just don't matter, and they're just, but you have to be like, obviously like nice, both of them were super nice. Just be calm, don't argue with the lawyer, because then that comes across. The first deposition was actually videotaped. They chose to videotape it. The second one wasn't. But either way, you want to be like super nice and respectful. And yeah, so that's about it. I mean, I tried to fit in some of the human story and the impact to their life. I tried to fit some of that in, but in the prep, and it kind of came across, I think, especially in both. The first one, because he was actually somebody from Tibet, and he had to leave because his parents were imprisoned, and he came as a refugee. So he had like a really powerful story, and then he built up his life here in America, starting with being a dishwasher and then working his way up, different jobs, until he reached a certain job that he's doing at the time of the accident, where he was making a lot of money and he was happy, and it was like his job was his identity. So we kind of talked about that a little bit. And then in the second one also, was from somebody from a different country who had to come here, and he had like a family business, and a lot of also, reached a lot of pinnacle kind of his life, and then unfortunately got hit by this truck and everything kind of got shattered. Yeah, so I mean, I think that the main thing is to just like listen to the question if you're being deposed, maybe understand what they're asking, answer the question, without speaking, just in your mind. Once you've understood it and answered it in your mind, then give the verbal answer, and try to be short with the liability questions. Just state as you remember it. But when they get to damages, when they start asking you about your injuries, at that point, I think it's good to speak as much as possible, right? About all the things you can't do like playing with your kids, or even things like sitting, sleeping, standing, walking, sports, you know, whatever the activities are, and really explain everything. So yeah, so I think like a deposition is nothing to be worried about. As long as you get prepared, you can do really well. So let us know what questions you have, and we are here for you. Our goal is helping serious injury victims and families. All the best. Okay, bye-bye.